My name is Madison Barra, and welcome to my podcast, where it's all about teaching you how to lose weight, keep it off, and actually enjoy the process. I've lost over 70 pounds, and these are the failures and lessons I've learned along the way. Hope you enjoy and subscribe. Today, I want to talk about a harsh reality, okay? A harsh reality that if you are, or if you have been a fit queen for a while, you might already know this and you might just need a reminder. Or if you're a new fit queen or you're just kind of restarting or starting your weight loss journey, this might be a shock to you, but it's definitely a harsh reality that everybody needs to be reminded of every now and then. So this harsh reality is, unfortunately, your metabolism is slow. Dun, dun, dun. Now, I'm sure if I asked you that, you'd probably already say that. You'd say, yeah, my metabolism could be faster, right? Or maybe it's asleep or dead, depending on where you're at, right? So you probably already have some idea of, hey, it's not as fast as I'd like it. Now, here's the bad news. Unfortunately, it's even slower than you think. Now, that's not a horrible thing. It's not unfixable, but it is a reality. So if you have ever counted your macros or counted your calories or did portion control or was on a diet and you stepped on the scale and it's not moving, it's because you are eating too much. You're just eating too much. Could be too much healthy food, could be too much junk food, but it's just too much. And it's because, and you might even be thinking to yourself, but I wasn't eating too much. I was eating healthy. I was eating good quantities. I wasn't overeating. I wasn't snacking. I stayed away from junk food. You might even be thinking like that. But at the end of the day, if the scale is not moving, you are consuming too many calories. Okay. Now, this is maybe something you've heard before. I say it often. It comes down to you're eating too many calories. But because the harsh reality of your snail-like metabolism, you have to eat less calories if you want to see the scale to move. And you have to see the scale move if you want to get motivated. Let's not pretend like the scale is not important. Everybody is demonizing the scale like it shouldn't be the only number we look at. Totally, that's fair. You should definitely have other measures of progress. But we shouldn't be avoiding the scale because we hate it or it throws us off. It's a machine. It shouldn't have that power. So if it's not moving, it's calorie related. And even if you think you're eating properly and it's still not moving, unfortunately, that means your metabolism is even slower and you need to cut back your calories even more. Not permanently, but temporary. Because the most important thing on this journey, especially when you're starting out or restarting, is that you have that almost instant results. Some type of instant feedback to say, yes, you're doing it right. Because based on our past, we've tried so many different things again and again and again, and we got discouraged by almost all of them, if not all of them, because what happened, we didn't see the instant results. Now, is it reasonable to think there'll always be instant results? No. But if we can foster that and replicate that, why would we not try? As long as it's in a healthy way. So the first thing I want to remind you of is your metabolism is slow. Unfortunately, much slower than you even think. And because of that, if you want the scale to move and it hasn't been, you need to eat even less calories, less than you already are. You either know you're overeating calories because you know your portions are off or you're having too much junk, or you currently think you're eating healthy and you should be losing weight, no problem, and you're not. That means you got to eat even less, unfortunately. Okay. Now, there's a difference between decreasing your overall food versus decreasing your calories, right? Because all different types of foods will have different calories. Some will be calorie dense, meaning they got tons of calories in a small amount, or they'll be high volume foods where you can get away with eating a lot of them because there's not a ton of calories in them. So the first place you want to start is with the high calorie foods, right? So sauces, oils, creams, junk foods, cakes, chips, you guys can all pretty much spot a high calorie food, but also things like avocados and cheese, things like that will also be higher in calories. And that's where you start, right? Just because you have to cut calories doesn't mean you have to cut food. Okay, there's a big difference. Okay, you can be eating less calories and more food than you're used to at the same time. That's totally doable. With what you're eating right now, you could totally change it so you're eating more food and less calories. It's just about being selective. And another word for selective is restrictive. Now, the word restrictive doesn't have a very good rap, right? Nobody wants a restrictive diet or a restrictive life or having restrictions or limitations, right? But another word for restriction is being selective. Restrictive is not a bad word. It just has bad experiences tied to it. Okay? When we say something that's restrictive, how are we going to feel? When we call a diet restrictive, when we call our habits restrictive, how do we feel? Right? When we say, I'm not allowed that, I can't have that, I shouldn't have that. When we speak in that language and we perpetuate what we are doing as feeling restrictive by just saying it or using those words, how do you expect to feel about it? Not very good. You're going to start to feel like you're trapped and the cage is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and you're going to want to burst out. That's why we overeat. That's why we binge. That's why we snack. That's why emotionally we can't control ourselves sometimes when we eat. It's not because you're restrictive. It's because of how you view what restriction is. So I'd say the first thing when dealing with restrictions, because there has to be some rules in place if you want to lose weight, right? There has to be. And the first step is to not call it being restrictive, is to call it being selective. Because selective makes you think, I've chosen this. I made this decision. I've chosen it. I've put my selections here. I've put my boundaries here. Whereas restrictive sounds like it was imposed upon you and you don't have a choice but to follow it or get no results. So I would say the first thing, if you're in a position where you're not seeing results and you think you should, and now you have to decrease your calories without feeling restricted, you must say selective. You must choose to be selective, which is choosing to be restrictive. But you're changing the word and it's going to change how you view the whole situation about which you're about to embark on. Because it really is all about mindset and perspective, right? And in fact, I would say that restriction leads to creativity. Imposing self-restrictions leads to, and I feel like gives birth to creativity, right? You ever kicked out of the house as a kid? Go play outside. What did you do? You got creative. You didn't have any toys to play with. What'd you play with? You played swords with some sticks. You climbed a tree. Maybe you got rocks to talk to each other. You got creative because there were restrictions imposed upon you. And if you think about, all the times, the most fun times you had, think about the most fun times where you laughed the most or you had the most fond memories. They're usually the ones that you didn't expect to have fun with because there was some type of restriction around it. Yet you had fun because you made the best. Those are usually the best situations, the best memories, when you make the best out of a situation, right? When things don't go according to plan and you still got to improvise. You got to change your mindset so you're not let down. Restriction breeds creativity, right? It makes you get creative in the kitchen. It makes you get creative with your at-home workouts. It makes you get creative with how you handle parties and conversations and attitudes and mindsets. The restriction actually makes you think outside of the box, which is how you start or how you stop feeling restricted to begin with. Because restriction makes you feel like you're in a box. But if you embrace the restriction, you call it being selective, you can now work your way through the box like a maze and get outside of it, which is so cool. So you're actually, by not embracing restriction to some degree, nothing crazy, to some degree, you're actually copping out and cheating yourself out of pushing your own creativity when it comes to your health. And when you can use your creativity with your health, don't you think you're going to enjoy it more? Don't you think you're going to have fun more? Don't you think you're not going to dread it or just have it as an item on your to-do list? Because when health becomes off of your to-do list, that's when you've won. That's when you've really won. So with the right restrictions, you breed creativity. Then you start to enjoy your journey. Because one of the laws of physics is for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? That's math, science, physics. That is what it is. That's how it goes. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. You heard that in grade 10 physics? What that means is, for anything that happens, let's say if there's a negative that happens, there's an equal positive that happens. Or if there's a positive that happens, there's an equal negative that happens. So what's cool about this, ladies, is that you can harness this law of physics to manipulate your mind into staying on track, to manipulate your mind into being okay with where you're at, instead of always trying to rush to finish to get to this dream life you think is waiting for you when you lose weight, right? Where you have to embrace it along the way to truly enjoy it when it's done. And so let's take an example. So let's say you have a negative restriction, right? So I'm not going to eat this piece of cake. Not going to eat this piece of cake. I'm not allowed it. I shouldn't eat it, right? If that's a negative restriction, and then we follow that restriction, the positive reaction, right? The opposite equal reaction on the positive side is the next day, because you avoided that cake, the scale dropped. And now it's not so important about a number, right? But it's what that number represented. Your hard work paid off. You feel like you found an answer. You're excited. You're hopeful. That's an equal and positive reaction from a negative restriction, right? So if you're ever in a situation where you feel negatively restricted, you have to future cast and say, what is the positive reaction of this negative action that you're viewing as negative in the moment? That's one of the first things you can do to get out of that. Because if we stay in the negative restriction mindset, right, what happens? We're like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to get this again. This isn't fair. Why do they get to eat it? I'm never going to be here again. I'm missing out, right? That's not a healthy mindset. And I've been there many, many times. And that's stemming from scarcity. From this is something I don't want to do. But remember, we're selective. We chose to do this. So what you have to do in that situation is you look at your positive reaction. That's where you start. Now, let's say you have a positive restriction. So your positive restriction is, I'm not going to eat the cake because I really don't want it. I know it's not going to make me feel good, and I'm kind of okay without it. But then the negative reaction to that action is, it was your aunt's birthday and she's pissed off at you that you didn't have a piece of her cake. Now the whole family's mad, and so on, right? So from your positive restriction, your positive action, you now have got a negative reaction out of it, right? So in that case, you just focus on your positive action. And so regardless of if it's a positive or a negative to start, that leads to a positive or negative in the beginning, no matter where our mind takes us, if you pause and you label where you're at, is it positive or negative? And then if it's negative, you go find your opposite reaction, and that's going to pull you in the right direction to being more selective and out of restrictive. Or if it is positive and it leads to a negative, don't focus on the outcome, go back to the positive action. And then that will keep you in the selective mindset instead of that restrictive mindset. Because if you want to lose weight, ladies, you know something needs to change. You can't keep doing what you're doing. If that worked, you'd be where you want to be. And most of the time, it all comes down to food. You're eating too much, too many calories, maybe not too much food, but too many calories. So you have to get selective with your food. You have to eat less than you're expecting, not to the point where, you know, you're dizzy and you're lightheaded and you got headaches and you're starving. That's unnecessary. But that's something that you need to be willing and ready to accept and do. And then you realize in the moment, I'm choosing to be restrictive, but I'm not going to call it that. I'm going to be selective because I am choosing every action and I am choosing every reaction that comes with my actions. And then I adjust from situation to situation to make sure that I stay in this frame of selection. I'm selective. I'm selective with my health. I'm selective with what I put in my body. I'm selective to the YouTube videos I watch, to the reality show that I hear, to the radio that I listen to the friends' conversations that I expose myself to. I am selective with everything I consume. mentally, emotionally, physically, literally, and metaphorically. And when you do that, you're just opening up your mind to the experience. It's not a good or a bad experience. It is a journey you selectively chose. And if you chose it, you must stay the course because you chose it for a reason. And oftentimes we're not afraid of failing. We're afraid of succeeding because we don't know what that looks like. And the unknown is scary. And the unknown is different than the current, than the known. And we're really comfortable with the known. We're really comfortable in the current. And are you willing to give up your current comfort for some discomfort? Are you willing to do that? Because that is what weight loss takes. Now you could go drop, 10 pounds in 1 week doing a crash diet or a quick fix fad out there. You totally could, but your mind hasn't changed as you lost that weight. And then I've noticed that with the women that I've coached is they will always bounce back up to the weight and at the weight that they mentally stopped growing. So let's say they start with Fit Queen. They have all these awesome epiphanies and they started at 200 pounds and we got them down to, let's say, 150 pounds. We lost 50 pounds, right? And there's a lot of mental growth that happened along that way. And then let's say at 50 pounds, they slowed down a little bit. They, whatever happened, vacation, holiday, they lost their steam, whatever, that happens. You go up and down on your journey. And then they try something really quick and drastic to drop the other 20 pounds, right? And every time, without a doubt, because they didn't embrace the journey, because they forgot that they had to mentally grow first for the scale to start going, then those 20 pounds that they lost without growing, they go right back up to the 150 because that's where they mentally stopped. They're mentally stopped there. And freedom, right? We all want food freedom, but freedom without restriction, without limits is paralyzing. Think about it. Really think about it. Ultimate freedom, no limit, no restriction. It's paralyzing, right? You ever want to lose weight and not know where the heck to turn before? You ever start Googling and then you lose your mind because there's so many options, so you just choose nothing? You ever get asked where you want to eat tonight, honey? And you've got no idea because there's too many options? Same idea. It's decision fatigue. Don't give yourself options. We thrive in restrictions. It's just you have to make sure that you've selected those restrictions and you understand the actions and reactions that happen with them. And then you just play back and forth between the two. Life has no limits except the ones that you make. And you've made lots. I don't cheat, I don't lie, I don't steal. Right? Those are just some of the many limits that we've already placed, whether consciously we've done that or subconsciously we live by that stuff. You got many limits and restrictions in your life already. You don't cheat, but you cheat on your diet. You don't lie, but you lie to your coach about what you ate. You don't steal, but you're stealing years off your life by not getting healthier. Your limits, your restrictions, they can't just stay in one area. Who you are needs to resonate and show up in every area of your life. And so being restrictive is not inherently bad. It is not wrong. It is not good or bad. It just is. And it is a tool that needs to be used appropriately, because too much restriction and we're in a box. We feel cramped. We want to get out. Too little restriction and we don't move and we're paralyzed. And most of the time, we haven't actually put enough restrictions on our life in all areas. And usually because we think it's a bad thing. Usually because we are associating it with negative things. But you don't have to do that. You can leave this call today and you can change how you view restrictions. You're just being selective. And there always needs to be selection. It's your life. You choose, you select. But put those boundaries in place or you won't move and you won't feel the pressure and you'll get paralyzed. If you found this podcast valuable, I hope you leave us a 5-star review. And if you want to learn more about the Fit Queen way of weight loss, visit www.fitqueen.com. Thank you for listening, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another episode.